What is up and what is going on, fellow fanatics? Appreciate all of you guys being here this evening. Again, later this time than the last time. I keep saying I'm not going to be on this late, and here I am on late every time. But we're here, and there are things that I had planned on doing today anyway. We were honestly just going to dive into just some Black Excellence stuff with Milestone and if you know that comic segment that DC had back in the day. But we were going to just dive into some stuff with Milestone and Dennis Conway and Dwayne McDuffie, how they started that, and we're going to kind of just watch some videos on our video on that and how they ushered in some of the or many of the Black DC faces that we see today. So we're going to talk about that, but also Van got another great interview. He first got the interview that he did with Nate Moore, where Nate first broke the news that he wasn't going to be doing that they weren't going to be doing the recast within Marvel Studios for T'Challa. But this time he has talked with the showrunner for Cross about Aldis Hodge being cast in the role or recasted in the role of T'Challa and Marvel, Black Panther in the MCU. So we're going to talk about that too. Watch the video, look at exactly what he said, and then we're going to dive back into what Aldis originally said, and then what he also, some things that they're keeping out, and blah, 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 blah. So we're going to get into all that, jump in all those things. Tonight's stream is not going to be a long one, but it will be a good one. So if you are here, hang out with us for a little bit, chat in the chat. If you've got, something you want to say or anything like that, again, the chat is available. I appreciate everybody being here. Black Claw, appreciate you. Planet Poppy, Press the Film Fan, Ant-Man 1991, Stamina, Andre, Raptor Cloak, and Armand Young. Appreciate you guys being here. It means a lot. So let's go ahead and get into the first thing here. And the first thing is just going to be what the Cross showrunner, so the show Cross that is on Amazon Prime that Aldis Hodge stars in, there is a scene in that show where Aldis Hodge is interrogating one of someone in the interrogation room, and whenever that scene first got around or made its rounds on Twitter, I remember a lot of people retweeting it and commenting under it saying, oh, he's exuding T'Challa. He's giving everything that we want T'Challa to be. He is T'Challa, blah, 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 blah. And I said the same thing. I retweeted it and said the same thing. This man is T'Challa. I mean, he has been at the top of my list up there with Damson and Yolande Noel as my top three. But Aldis has been my number one for quite some time. So yeah, I definitely would like to have Aldis Hodge in that role. I've said that before. We've done a video on that, talked about it again when everything broke. So if you look back on everything, we'll just look at the segment first, and we'll kind of just dive into everything after. So let's listen to what he had to exactly say.
What do you think about Aldis Hodge as Black Panther?
I've talked to Aldis a lot, so we have not spoken about this out loud, actually, almost like we don't want to jinx it, but I 100% agree. I 100% agree. To me, and you know this feeling, we all know it when it's happening, is when somebody who's sort of been bubbling for a long time, you've been appreciating them, you've been tracking them, you've been saying, oh, he's always good. Every time I see him, he's good. Or, oh, she always had that little spark. As soon as they blow up, you can see when they're on that brink. And then when it happens to the right people, it's so satisfying because you are happy for them, but you've also, it's sort of like you've been waiting for this moment. And for me, Aldis Hodge, him stepping into a role like, T'Challa would be, really that sort of symbolic shout out broadcasting to the world that this is his time. And if you watch Cross, you're seeing somebody at the height of their power.
Yep.
You're seeing someone who is physically embodying things that most people can't. You're seeing somebody that's exuding charisma, but he's also keyed in at such an intellectual level in an impressive way and then he taps the emotion, and he hits all of it, and he plays all the notes perfectly. It's just like this great culmination of all his life experience, all his career experience, and his ambition. Because you have to really be okay with making yourself vulnerable in order to get to the places he's getting to right now as a performer. And don't forget the sweat equity he had to, put into getting his body and his physique to the place that it is right now. To me, it's a no-brainer. That's heat and serve right now. Throw that dude into Black Panther, and you good for another 10 years.
Yes,
I'm all
sir.
about seeing more Aldis Hodge on my.
Yes, sir. I love everything that Ben Watkins had to say there. Everything that he had to say from, just the start of it. Just that him and Aldis have been quietly talking about this. It's not something that they want to talk about out loud, just not wanting to jinx it and things like that. I love the fact that he also said something that Nate Moore refuses to say, and that is T'Challa's name. He didn't just say he wants to play the Black Panther. He said that we want Aldis Hodges in the role to play T'Challa, the Black Panther. So I love it. I love this. Again, bravo to Van for asking those questions, and I appreciate Ben for even giving the answer that he gave, because once again, it just further highlights that there are actors out there that want this role. And again, I don't know this for sure. This is just my theory if you're just tuning in, or maybe you didn't hear me the past 2 nights. But my theory is, when I first heard Jeff Snyder, when he broke the news that, hey, Marvel's looking at recasting T'Challa, the Black Panther in the MCU, blah, 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 blah. They already offered it to a young black actor, up-and-coming actor, and he turned it down. My theory is this. I just simply do not believe that Marvel Studios was shopping that around as T'Challa, son of T'Chaka. I could be wrong. Maybe they did, as T'Challa, son of T'Chaka. I believe they are shopping it around because if we were to believe what I've been saying the past 2 days, if you've been paying attention, if we were to believe all the rumors and things like that, I'm still keyed into them to believing that they are casting for Toussaint in Avengers 5, 6, and Black Panther 3. That's a whole nother conversation, not why we're here today. You can go look at that in the past 2 streams. But my whole theory is I believe that they are shopping Toussaint around, and I believe whatever young black actor they did offer this role to, because again, at first I did not believe that they even that an actor even turned it down, because why would any black actor black male actor, up and coming or otherwise, want to turn down the role of being this regal black king, this the first black superhero, this king of his own nation, intelligent, proficient in martial arts, part of the Avengers, has his own galactic empire. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Why would you not want to step into that role? Why would you not want to be that beacon of hope and light for young black men and little black boys and things like that? So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I don't believe that. But again, knowing that they're trying to shop around Toussaint, I believe that they offered the role to a young black up-and-coming actor as Toussaint, and they said I'm against that. And the reason I'm saying that, the reason I say, okay, they are keyed in to conversations like knowing the conversation of T'Challa over Toussaint and the recast conversation, Ben Watkins and Aldis Hodges were well aware of the conversation being had of recasting T'Challa, but having Aldis Hodges in that role. As I said, we would be pretty ignorant to believe that these conversations and these outlets and things that we're seeing on Twitter aren't reaching these celebrities. Hell, we just watched an interview with Coleman Domingo last night when he was talking about he saw on Twitter all the Kang rumors about him being Kang. So of course Aldis Hodges was on Twitter, and of course he saw all the things, all the AI images that were popping up everywhere on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on Pinterest, on everywhere. They were popping up everywhere, people asking the same question. How would you feel about Aldis Hodges being in the role of T'Challa? And a lot of people changed their tunes. I even showed you the contrast between the differences and contrast between those 2 posts, to where that Instagram page posted, how would you feel about T'Challa being recast? Not saying Aldis Hodges, but then the next post they put with an AI picture of Aldis Hodges up, they asked, how would you feel about Aldis Hodges taking on the role? In the original post, everybody was like, no, the kid, the son, they did that already. Look at the post-credit scene. I'm against it, blah, blah, blah. But when they showed Aldis Hodges in the role, I think that's the issue. And I said this before, I posted this on Twitter today, or I posted a video on Twitter today to where somebody commented, people fell in love with Chadwick, not T'Challa. And that is not a problem. That's not a problem at all. The issue is, again, this is Marvel's fault because Marvel did not refused and still refuse to put someone else in the suit. It is beyond the scope of a casual or anyone's imagination, or most people's imagination, to be able to see someone else in that role. But the minute we started, or people, whoever, started making the AI images of Aldis Hodges and putting those around and having those go out all over the internet, everybody started saying, well, you know what? Hold the fuck up. I can see it. I couldn't see it originally. It was always about the kid, but I can see this. I can see him being T'Challa. So again, as I said a few weeks ago or last week or whenever it was, maybe they just needed to see an image of someone else in the role. So the fact that this is that they're having these conversations, and the fact that again, I love it. I love the fact that they're having the conversation. I love the fact that Aldis Hodges is privy to what is going on. I like the fact, and again, this is not the first time that he's talked about this. I'll get to that in just a second. This is not the first time that Aldis Hodges talked about this. But something else that I like that he said is just how you can have him for the next 10 years, how he ended it on that. You can have this guy for the next 10 years. God forbid something happened to him, but you could have this guy for the next 10 years. He is physically in shape. We've seen that. If you've seen that, again, the scene with him interrogating the criminal in the interrogation room, he's got on a tight ass muscle shirt. Aldis Hodges is in the shape. We saw him in Black Adam. He's in the shape to do this. He's got the acting chops, I believe, to take on this role as T'Challa, and this is something that he really wants. So I don't know if this is on the scope for Marvel. I'm still in the same boat. I'm still in the same boat of believing what they are doing with Toussaint. Again, that's not why we're here today, but I believe that they are still doing all that. But this, again, just, it does give hope. It does shed some type of light on the possibility of, like Nate Moore said, never say never, the possibility of them actually wising up and saying, let's do the right thing. Let's get somebody in here that actually wants to play this role. And again, I want to highlight, they did not say Toussaint. They didn't say T'Challa. They didn't say T'Challa Jr. or the second or whatever the fuck you want to say. Ben Watkins said T'Challa, the Black Panther. So it's a no-brainer. Like they all said, it's a no-brainer. But the other thing I want to highlight here is Aldis Hodges, again, has talked about this before. I've covered this particular article by Fandom Wire before. And I'm just going to skip down to the quote here of what Aldis Hodge said. It says, in an interview with the Examiner via Comic Vine, Hodge expressed his love for the character of Black Panther. He claimed to have read the comic books, and when Marvel announced that he would join the MCU, the actor felt very ecstatic. Now, before I read this quote, I do want to say, whenever the pictures and the AI images and everything were going around of Aldis Hodges and people were captioning it with, how would you feel about Aldis Hodges being the Black Panther, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people, a lot of outlets were grappling that in with the same quote, with this quote here. And where he said, I want fans to know that the one role I really want to play is Black Panther. I grew up loving the Marvel world and grew up on the martial arts. On martial arts. I still train. When Black Panther came around, he was almost like an African American Batman. So they've been sharing that quote, and that has been, and I'm glad he said that, the emphasis on the African American part of it, him being black, him growing up on, Aldis Hodges highlighting that he grew up on martial arts. T'Challa's proficient in martial arts. You need somebody that knows that stuff. So yeah, I like that I like that part. I like that quote. But it's interesting to me, and most outlets they only share one part of the quote. They don't share all of the quote or whatever. But sometimes they'll shake it up and they'll share different parts of the quotes. Different outlets will share different whatever, or they'll do another post and share another part of what he said. No one is sharing the entire quote here. Now, I covered this a while ago and I shared the entire quote, so I'm going to go ahead and reread the entire quote. He went on to say, well, this is what they said. The actor has been very vocal about bringing Black Panther into the world because of diversity and representation. Oh God, I know when we talk about Black Panther, that's what the antis don't like to hear, how that this is all about representation. It's not all about representation, but this is under that conversation and under that umbrella that I'm always saying there are layers to recasting T'Challa. There is the base level that a lot of you anti-recasters and a lot of you casuals and normals and whatever just see it as disrespectful. You see the hashtag, whatever. But if you dig just a little bit deeper under the surface, you might see what we are saying. You might have an aha moment and understand, hey, I understand where these guys are coming from. I understand where these black voices are coming from. So what he said here on the diversity and representation, how many African American kids or Latin kids, any kids of any culture or ethnic group can look at somebody up there up there and say, wow, I could be that. We don't have that very often at all. In the comic book world, there are few African American characters. They just need to explore them. All right. Now, he didn't stop there. He went on even further. Now, that's on the diversity end. Now he's going on the representation side of things, where he said, I grew up in the Marvel Universe, and Black Panther was my connection to make me feel like I could be a superhero. And the Avengers movies fall right into that, because the Ultimate Avengers 2 comic book series is how Black Panther gets introduced. So it would flow naturally. Okay, now he went on here. Let me see, make sure that is sure I have the right quote. Yeah, so talking about wanting to have the inclusion and wanting to have the representation and what that would mean and things like that. You have the right guy right here. Right time, right guy. Right here. He said vocally before, this is not a new quote or anything like that. He said vocally before that he wants this role. He said vocally before that he, out of all the roles, this is the one he wants. Marvel Studios just has to do the right thing. We can make all the videos we want. We can have, all these different podcasters like Van Lathan or whoever else come out and do the interviews, and it's great. It gives hope. It's invigorating and all that kind of stuff, but it is absolutely hollow and means nothing until Marvel Studios themselves decide to take a hard look in the mirror and make the right decision. Until then, we're just making videos. Until then, this is just another report of somebody else wanting the role, of someone saying, hey, I'm over here. I would like to play the role. I would love to be T'Challa, son of T'Chaka in the MCU. But again, Marvel has to make the right decision. Now, one of the other last things that I wanted to touch on before we get to everything else here was Ben Watkins himself. Just listening to him again speak, listening to him talk about his closeness with Aldis Hodges, the importance of the character and the importance of having and all that kind of stuff like that. Listening to him talk about it, I had this epiphany. Why not just, again, why not recast? Why not all this kind of stuff? If we were just in a what if world, I would love to have Ben Watkins attached to the Black Panther franchise as a producer in Nate Moore's position. And some of you might be saying, why him? Well, I did some research on the brother before, and he is a brother. Just the way he was talking, and if you look at not just the way he was talking, if you go to his Instagram here and you look at his Instagram post, he is someone that is for the culture. He is definitely for the culture. And with him being for the culture, I don't think that he would be one of those people. And of course, being friends with Aldis Hodge, I believe Aldis has that strong personality that Chad had to come in and say, no, we're not going to speak in British accents, or no, we're not going to do this. And if you couple Aldis being that strong black voice with another strong black voice and a producer, you might actually get a damn good Black Panther film where nobody's tap dancing, nobody's trying to appease this person or that person, because that's not what the first Black Panther film was, but I'm saying that second Black Panther film, then yeah, we could get something really, really great. And like I said, I like what I heard from him, from Ben Watkins. Like he said, Aldis does not want to speak about this publicly because he does not want to jinx anything. But let's all send that positive energy toward Aldis Hodges, because we definitely all want him in that role. It would be definitely something to have him, not only have him in the role, but 10 years in the role. Not a variant, not come in just for Avengers 5 and 6, but let's get that brother in for the next 10 years in that role. So definitely love it. Definitely love it. Want to touch on that. Not much else to go off on there. We'll have to, obviously, like I said, it's just videos at this point, but go check out and look at Ben Watkins on his, these are his siblings. Look at him on his Instagram page. Like I said, looking at different things that he had posted, and he is definitely for the culture, and definitely I don't think would be one of those that would be a Nate Moore and put the culture on the back burner. So like it a lot, loved it actually. So the next thing that we'll get into is just going to be, like I said, if you are a DC fan, and we're just in honor of Black History Month, even though I don't celebrate Black History Month as a concept, you can't reduce Black history to sometimes the shortest month, or I'm sorry, the shortest month of the year. Black history is American history, and it deserves to be studied or celebrated year round. So I don't tend to fall into the whole it's Black History Month deal, but in honor of it and to celebrate Black excellence, we are going to take a look into, I don't know if you've seen this, but this is Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics, and this was the season 1 episode 5, and it was The Color of Comics, again, where they dove into the Milestone comics with Conway and McDuffie, how they started the Milestone segment over there under DC, bringing a lot of the Black faces like Icon, Static, and many others to the DC world. So I just wanted to take a look at this because a lot of them were also inspired by the Black Panther, which they talk about. They're being inspired by T'Challa, being inspired by seeing T'Challa in Fantastic Four number 52 for the very first time in 1966, talking about the importance of that character, talking about how they didn't see any Black characters before seeing that character, how that inspired a lot of them to want to go on and write comics, want to be comic, writers and things like that, to not just be comic writers, but write for that specific character and things like that. It just further highlights, the reason I'm doing this is because it further highlights the importance of T'Challa, not just T'Challa, the importance of all these Black characters that came because of T'Challa. As I've said many times, in order for these characters to fly, to run, walk, whatever, T'Challa first had to be created. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have a lot of the characters we have today. And these guys are going to tell you that themselves. So let's take a dive into history with some Black excellence, and celebrating Black excellence, and listen to what these guys had to say.
I read a lot of comic books when I was a kid. There were no Black superheroes. None of them looked like me.
As a young Black kid, we would look at the representations that we had and sort of be ashamed.
The comic books today, they reflect the people who create them, people who are in charge. We're mostly white males.
At the time, I said, if I want a world where there's Black superheroes, we're gonna have to create some Black superheroes.
Every Black kid who's ever wanted to do comics has had that idea.
I told him, the only way we're going to see it is if we do it. Milestone Comics was heroes for everybody.
They were very, very innovative and ahead of their time.
It was definitely revolutionary.
The political act was forming the company and having 4 Black guys in charge. We broke a lot of barriers, but there's a price to be paid for doing things differently. So, you want the real story of Milestone? Okay, here we go.
I want to say we should be good to watch this and not get struck. It's on YouTube, so we should be good. We should be good.
I was raised in Springfield Gardens, Queens, by my grandparents. They took all of us kids in after my mom died. She died when I was 8. After my mom died, I met this kid, Derek Dingle.
He and I sat next to each other from 2nd through 5th grade. We were pretty much inseparable. I went to Dennis's home one day with a stack of comic books from my brother's collection.
I did not know what a comic book was until Derek showed me it. And I was just done. From that moment, I just looked at them and I was just gone. After that, I probably went to school to look at comic books. More than anything, like to get the new comic books from Derek. I had thick bottle glasses. I had a pocket protector. I looked like Sam Jackson in Unbreakable. You know, with that hairstyle that went like that? I was that kid. I was picked on. Well, the comics were like helping me cope with all that. Or maybe sometimes you get picked on because you're reading comic books.
Comics was sort of that little underground thing that we all did back then.
Growing up, I read a lot of comic books. Most of the kids in my neighborhood read comic books.
It doesn't grab everybody. You just know it's for you. I mean, you have to be born a comic book fan, I think. Because once you see one, it's like, when you open one and the smell and the pages and everything, you have to be born a comic book fan, I think.
Black kids read comics in huge numbers. The presumption that black people don't read comics comes from people who don't know black people.
To be a kid growing up in that era, you know, and reading the Fantastic Four and reading the Hulk and Spider-Man and Batman, Superman, whatever it was we were reading, and to not see yourself, you know, like we were completely invisible.
There were representations of African Americans in mainstream comics, but they tended towards kind of the stereotypical or the racist. Probably the most infamous would be Ebony White with Will Eisner's The Spirit.
Big lips, big eyes. He was meant to be comic relief.
Whitewash in 1941, this big red lip, pimp hat wearing guy who's, oh Lord help me, you know, this kind of thing. He was always in trouble, and it was just a superfluous, unnecessary character.
As a young black kid, you know, we would look at these other characters and sort of be ashamed because that's all we would see of ourselves. That was the representations that we had. There was nothing to aspire to.
After a while, you're saying, why isn't the hero African American?
I remember the day when Derek bought me a copy of Fantastic Four number 52. And I remember us reading it under the desk. We were supposed to be, you know, doing our lessons. And that was the first time I had seen the Black Panther.
That was something, that was a special moment.
When the Black Panther showed up, just all in black, still one of the coolest outfits in the history of comic books. He's not a sidekick. He's not a mugger.
His introduction was him taking on the Fantastic Four to see if he could beat them. And he did. And as a kid, that blew my mind.
They've beaten Dr. Doom. They've beaten Galactus, who eats planets. But the Black Panther defeats them all. So you go, this cat is badass.
The Black Panther is a really important character. Now, of course, all of his earliest adventures were written by, you know, white writers and drawn by white artists.
Well, I never thought that it was my place to talk about politics, but I also felt there were some things that perhaps ought to be mentioned. And one of the things I've always been against is bigotry.
I like the pilot very much. Yeah, she's a black girl. That's good.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby named their black superhero the Black Panther in the middle of the civil rights movement. Think about that. Stan Lee and two Jewish people.
And I thought, I will make him the king of a black nation in Africa.
He had his own country, and his country was the most technologically advanced country on the planet.
The mythology is that he sort of understood that Americans were a little too racist to accept like a black superhero from America.
The Black Panther can be powerful over there in Wakanda. And so he is not as inherently threatening as someone that you might see around the corner.
The first African-American hero I saw was Luke Cage. I would go to my local comic book store. They had their comic books on a spinner rack. And I remember this one standing out. It was just a single figure of a black man bursting out of chains. And I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Brought it to school, and I showed it to Derek. He was blown away. It was one of the few times I got to show him something, you know, as opposed to him always showing me.
In the beginning, I embraced it, and I bought all of the issues, but I was finding it hard to read it. Some of the characters struck me as being stereotypical and sort of making fun
I mean, I loved Luke Cage, and my cousins and I would sit down and we would read Luke Cage, and we would laugh, and we would go, nobody talks like this.
You know, I don't think that Luke Cage should be saying Sweet Christmas all the time.
Sweet Christmas, really? I knew there was a white guy sitting back, writing and panning this going, what does the dude from Harlem sound like?
Black people have never been in control of their own story in this country.
Right.
People should tell their own stories.
One thing that comic books always communicated to me is two things, heroes and possibilities. And if you don't see yourself as part of that, then, you know, who are the heroes? And what are my possibilities?
When Derek and I first started hanging out, it was all about reading comic books. Eventually, it became about us making our own comic books. I don't even think we thought to copy them or mimeograph them or anything. We just sold the original art, like stapled together, like, you know, you can get your own comic. The first characters we created was a character called Black Vig, and Jive was his partner. And I remember thinking, these are the coolest characters ever. And one day they're gonna be famous.
I think at one point Dennis did say, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this when we were older?
That was the dream, to somehow, someday, make our own comic books.
We graduated, graduation day from PS37. My family, the day after, moved to Norfolk.
Because he was my best friend, it was unreal for me. It was unreal. I didn't think I would see him again.
Getting on that Greyhound bus and knowing that it's a possibility I never would be connected with my best friend again.
When I got into comics, there were very few artists who looked like me. So I didn't have a whole lot of examples to look up to.
Comic book industry in the early 1970s wasn't diverse at all. It was a bunch of Jewish and Italian guys.
I'd say that DC was probably at that point entirely white and male, except for, you know, two women, and then I upped the demographics by being the third.
At the time, there were only a few black artists and no writers. I remember one black guy, I can't remember his name, who was in the production area. And beyond that, there was me.
Arvell was like the living example of a black person who made his living drawing comics.
One day, this 14-year-old kid came over to our apartment, knocked on the door, and I opened it and was, "Hey, you're Arvell Jones. Hey, it's really great to meet you." And he just kind of barged his way in, threw down some of his artwork and told me, "Hey, man, I'll do whatever I can do." Well, that kid was Dennis Cowan.
He was an eager kid, and I thought that took a lot of guts to stick his neck out to get what he wanted. So he was always at the apartment helping Arvell.
I wasn't drawing anything. I was making coffee, running errands, sweeping the floor. I was a terrible assistant. I think the only thing I really wanted to do was draw. 3 years later, I was like 17. I had a chance to bring my portfolio into the art director at DC at the time. He looks at my portfolio. My heart's beating. I remember that now. This is good. He handed it back, looked at me, said, "These are good, but we already have a colored artist working for us." At the time, I said, strangely, it was like, oh, okay. So you're not hiring any more black artists. That's the only thing I thought. I didn't realize how up it was until later. After that, Jim Shooter at Marvel hired me to draw Luke Cage.
So Cage is trapped by the Hell-One army. Right. Okay.
And he hired me to do it because he thought that I might be familiar with the subject matter. You're black, so we're gonna give you this black to do it. So I got a chance to do Luke Cage.
Good to see Marvel hasn't changed at all. He's black, so let's just have him do it. Ryan.
Cage, which I had read when I was a little kid. After that, I had another opportunity to draw the Black Panther. Now, it was a big deal for me. This is at the start of my political awareness a bit. That story was about the Black Panther fighting apartheid, and his South African neighbors were being oppressed, and what was he doing about it, being the king of Wakanda. Around that time, I started to get recognized throughout the industry. It was a bit surreal.
I even ended up in an ad for Dewar's Scotch. While I was at Marvel, I met another black artist, Michael Davis. I heard about Michael from a mutual friend of ours. Her name was Darlene.
Darlene said to me, Michael, you gotta meet Dennis Cowan. Because he's like only one of 3 or 4 black people working in the industry.
I don't understand how it happened, but we ended up being very good friends.
From that point, he became my boy and quite literally introduced me to the industry.
It was 1983. I came back to New York. I got a job at Black Enterprise as an associate editor. One day in 1989, I was on my way to work. I see this 50th anniversary Batman comic book. And then I go to the artist. It's Dennis Cowan. Very next day, I called DC Comics. I have to find Dennis Cowan. I said, you know what? I'm gonna go to Dennis's house. And I rang the doorbell.
And I went to answer the door, and there's Derek in a suit.
I guess I probably looked like, you know, an IRS agent.
That's one of those movie moments, too. You open the door, and your best friend, who you haven't seen in 10 years or whatever, is just standing there going, hey, what's up? New York City was insane. The things that were going on were crazy. Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights.
We will not continue to pay for people that abuse and murder and maim us.
I mean, the 80s shaped what we did. It's funny that my start would be with a group of guys, you know, and we sort of like a hip-hop X-Men, I guess. For a lot of people, the escape was music, whatever. My escape was comic books.
Hip-hop was emerging in a very political way. Public Enemy, Tribe Called Quest.
Def Jam was rising. Spike was creating, you know, his production company.
She's Gotta Have It, Do the Right Thing, to Malcolm X. Spike Lee, for us, was a major influence because Spike Lee did it himself.
In the comic book medium, there was an absence of this voice.
99.9% of comic book companies up to that point had been owned and run by white males. My own inclination was to create comics that were more contemporary. That even though it was a fantasy world, we wanted it to look like the world we lived in.
He was a brilliant person, not just a brilliant writer, but a brilliant person.
Dwayne McDuffie was probably the only black writer that I had met. I met him because they'd asked me to do Deathlock at Marvel, and he happened to be the writer. I responded to his writing immediately.
My biggest issue generally in writing mainstream comics is if you write a black character, he represents blackness, and that's ridiculous. That's way too much, way too complex, way too much weight for any character, any single character to hold.
And we both gotten to the point where we were frustrated at the lack of characters to express the things that we wanted to express. But that all changed in 1992. I literally woke up one morning. I thought, this is it. If I want a world where there's black superheroes, we're gonna have to create some black superheroes. I got up and I called Michael Davis.
The idea was to create a universe of characters that look like us.
What do you think? Am I crazy? And he said, you're crazy.
Every black kid who's ever wanted to do comics has had that idea.
I told him, the only way we're going to see it is if we do it.
It was that time.
So the next person we called was Dwayne McDuffie. And Dwayne looked at both of us and said, you guys are crazy. And we're like, nah, Dwayne, we could do it because whatever reasons I came up with, I don't remember. And Dwayne said, you're crazy, but I'm gonna do it with you because you're crazy. But we'll do it, but you're crazy.
Dennis was committed from day one to get Derek involved. You know why? Because him and Derek made up comic books when they were kids. How cool is that?
Dwayne and Michael and I knew nothing about business, but we knew Derek wore a tie.
I always wore a suit, even on Saturdays.
Here's the idea, and I pitched him the same thing. He said, you're crazy.
My response, of course, was, Dennis, I have a job. And he said, Derek, we have to do this. You know, people have marched and died so that we can create these images. From that point on.
That's, again, when we talk about the different layers and when people want to say it's really not that deep. But it is. It is that deep. There's the surface level, and then there's the many other levels that are attached to why representation matters, why T'Challa being on screen as T'Challa, son of T'Chaka, that was created in the height of the civil rights movement, why that's significant, why all of that matters, why it is that deep. As he just said, people marched and died for Black artists and writers to be able to bring those Black fictional characters to life, to be that Black Superman, that Black Wonder Woman, or just, again, not even comparing them to the white heroes, to be Static, to be Icon, to be T'Challa, to be the others. It's important. So again, that's kind of why we're showing this.
The reservations, faded away.
We met constantly. I drew a lot of pictures. I probably designed now the whole universe.
I got a phone call from Dennis Cowan and always wanted to do something like this.
Christopher Priest wrote some Bible stuff. Michael wrote some Bible stuff.
I created most of the background stuff, and then I ran it all past Dwayne McDuffie, who made it better.
Dwayne McDuffie distilled all of it, rewrote it, and made it fit into this 28-page document. On a Friday evening, I bought that document over to DC Comics right before Paul Levitz had to go home and gave it to him in his hands.
Dennis Cowan walked into my office. We were friendly, and he had a nice thick Bible.
He couldn't put it down. Every time he put it down, he'd pick it back up.
So Monday morning, he calls me on my phone and says, Dennis, this is great. We want to do it. Come down and meet with us.
It was euphoric. It was exciting. We did pop the cork and the champagne, but what was cooler than that was when we went into our offices. That made it real.
Oh my God, what does this really all mean?
That means that we had to deliver.
And that part is dope too. And I think, when we talk about, actually somebody just told me when I was thanking We Ourselves, go check out their videos that they do for Recast, or just their channel in general if you're not subscribed. But when I was thanking them for the shout out that they gave to me in their video, somebody commented to me this morning and said, stop whining, create your own studio. Oh, but no, really, not me per se, but, the people out there, there are Black voices, Black artists, Black, business guys. There are people out there to where we may need to step back into that for us, by us mentality, because if they are not going, and I know people have had this conversation before, this is not a new conversation, but if it's not going to be given to us the way that we want it given to us, the way that we feel we need to be represented, the way that we feel Black stories should be told. I mean, as they said at the very beginning of this, I think it was Mr. Davis that said it, people need to tell their own stories. Black folks need to tell their stories. White folks need to tell, because you don't know exactly the Black experience. You don't know, in 2020, how people kept saying, I've got people that had Black children, I've got a Black kid, I know what it's like. You don't. You have a Black kid, but you don't know what it's like to be Black. So to know the Black experience, to be able to, tell those stories from our point of view, again, that FUBU, for us, by us mentality. What these brothers did was dope. It was phenomenal. Milestone, those comics, that comic division, that phenomenal. Changed the game, definitely changed everything. If we could do that again.
We all initially
even in the movie realm as well.
Studio in Manhattan at the time. We said, okay, if we're going to create a comic book universe, what do we need to do? And then we said, well, we need archetypes, like the Superman archetype.
Icon is an African-American. No, he's not. He's not. Icon is an alien.
Crash landed here on Earth. The pod being discovered, but he wasn't discovered by Mom and Pa Kent. He was discovered by a slave. It was important to us to represent there was no one monolithic black point of view.
He's a Republican because Lincoln freed the slaves, and he's sticking with what's working for him.
Icon had a sidekick, Rocket, and Rocket was the antithesis of Icon. Rocket was a Spitfire and young and energetic.
The book was told through her point of view, which was another Dwayne innovation. You only saw the world through her eyes. If she didn't see it, you didn't see it.
Genius. Just genius.
To see them having the conversations that they were having, to see Rocket challenge his assumptions about class and work ethic and the way in which you can pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, reading that comic book became a much more rich experience for me.
The next book we released was Hardware.
I loved Hardware because he was just cool. You know, he had that Tony Stark kind of swagger to him.
Hardware is a technological genius who works for a corrupt company, Albert Industries, and because he recognizes the corruption in the company, he decides to create the hardware armor and fight the corruption.
First couple of pages of the first issue, there's this metaphor of a caged bird. Certainly, Dwayne was writing about himself and that frustration of working for the man that doesn't appreciate you.
The next book we did was a little different.
What if we had a teenage kid, he's a black kid, and he has nuclear powers? No, what if he has speed powers, like he's really, no. What if he has electric powers? He can control electricity. And we'll call him Static.
Static was interesting because Static, it was one of my favorite comics. It was the most old-fashioned.
He spoke to who the core demo was, which was smart, nerdy black kids, or I guess the new phrase is blurred.
We made him a geek. We made him a big science fiction fan like the four of us actually were when we were that age.
The last thing we needed was a superhero team because all great comic book universes have a superhero team.
There's no other superhero team like the Blood Syndicate.
All superhero teams are basically like a gang anyway. So why not just do a real gang?
I love the diversity of Blood Syndicate. You have gay, straight, lesbian, African-American, Latino, Native characters in a comic which you had never seen before.
And there were a lot of metaphors for police brutality, drugs, and how drugs ravage communities. The Blood Syndicate dealt with all of that.
Each of these characters in that universe, in the Milestone universe, to a degree because they were black, had to eat crow. They didn't turn their backs on the greater good. They still said, damn it, this dude thinks I'm trash, but let me go and save this airplane.
There's never been a good distribution chain that was black owned or black controlled or even particularly black friendly.
They really wanted to be free to do things very independently. There's limits to how much independence was possible when they required both distribution, economic support. It was challenging.
We had complete editorial control. They could say no.
If something offended DC's, not principles, but sort of DC's brand in some way, I think we had the ability to say, please don't publish that.
They had final approval of what they were going to publish. It was their money, their comic book company, and everything else.
Meet the men of Milestone, the newest division of DC Comics. Dwayne McDuffie is the editor-in-chief.
We want to give people that shock of recognition I got the first time I saw a black superhero, and I went, wow, you know, I could do this. Yeah, I could be Superman.
20 years ago, there were 2 titles being published by a major publisher that had black lead characters until this week, where everything changed. History changed this week.
The books were as good or better than anything else on the stands. And I read them not out of some sense of obligation, but because I wanted to read the books.
These Milestone comic books are really dope, man. I got this Blood Syndicate, man. They got all kind of people in here. What you got?
Icon, man.
Oh, he looks hell. What you got, Dre?
They got hardware, man. All 3 issues, man.
Yeah?
How many comics?
It's hard to say what numbers we expected from the Milestone comics, but they were really good.
We've got these jackets with M on them.
It's kind of like that same shock that Marvel had with the 1.3 billion that the first Black Panther film did. It's again the black dollar, the power, and it wasn't just black folks, tuned into Black Panther 1 or the Milestone comics, but it's just another example of that, the power of the mighty black dollar, and how black folks will show up for the culture like that. If it is something that really is going to capture the interest, if people are really interested in it, somebody should really look into doing the studios like that with black voices, or For Us By Us studio.
That, right? It's like you walk to a convention back then with that M on your back, man. It's like you're a Beatle, because we did something that no one else could even imagine getting done.
Sometimes you didn't know who would be coming into the office. One day it'll be John Singleton. Another day it'll be Quincy Jones.
Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court judge, wrote Derek a fan letter.
Because of Icon. In fact, invited me to his chambers.
It was amusing to us and a little strange that Clarence Thomas would say that this was his favorite book. Now I think about it, I'm like, well, yeah, he liked Icon, who was just a conservative dude.
I moved to New York City to work for Milestone specifically. I knew that they were making history.
They knew me as the white guy at Milestone. I ended up doing some of the most exciting work of my life.
Dwayne had a very strong point of view that he wanted to get across editorially.
Dwayne had this unshakable moral code. It created some challenges, because in some situations in terms of business, there needs to be, compromise.
When things are going well, you're kind of rolling along and it's all good. It's only when things are not going so well that you start taking stock of maybe this wasn't what we thought it was. There was a political heart to Milestone.
Dwayne McDuffie has always been political. His books have always been political. His stories have always been political. He was an activist.
2 questions Dwayne always asked in his story. One is, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the other is, what if this was really happening? How would it play out?
Well, in Icon and Rocket, we had Rachel get pregnant at 14. So it's a teenage pregnancy. So we were dealing with kind of heady stuff in 1992.
It was to address a certain reality that has never been reflected in comics before.
We got into some kind of controversy about that.
We published a lot of stuff that made them very uncomfortable, which always sort of amused me because they weren't as uncomfortable when they dealt with those topics.
Well, it was largely Dwayne's job that we would butt heads with.
He thought that they can't tell us what to do. They hired us for a specific point of view. And if they're not going to let us do this, then why are we there? We have to do this and we have to do it. We're making a point. I felt it was unnecessary.
Dennis, I think, was starting to butt heads with Dwayne more. They're 2 different people.
It wasn't that he was more of an idealist. It was just that I was a little bit more practical.
I knew there was a lot of internal tension, and the friendship and the partnership started to unravel.
Probably the biggest actual fight that we had was an issue of static.
The incident that happened was that we wanted to show safe sex in a Static Shock cover.
Sounds like something we'd have an argument about.
The way we were going to do that was to show condoms in a wrapper on the cover.
On the cover, he's making out with his girlfriend. There's no flesh exposed, but they're going at it pretty good.
The idea of a black teenage superhero having sex with his girlfriend and using condoms, that was a lot for DC. You can imagine There was a lot of Pepto-Bismol being had at DC that day.
I remember there was one issue of one of the books where we had a fairly energetic disagreement about the cover art, and we asked them to make changes. They were very frustrated by that.
That was a huge, huge fight, and I think a lot of it wasn't about sexuality, it was about black sexuality.
He didn't like it at all. You know, when they decided to censor that particular issue of Static Shock, he fought back. He fought back pretty hard. Even though they said that we couldn't do it, somehow in between the stage of where they approved it and when we sent it to the printer after getting it back, somewhere between Dwayne McDuffie and whoever else was working with them, through some kind of bait and switch, the condom was back on the cover. But that's not what the issue was ever, really. The issue was the editorial that accompanied the cover. And the editorial page started talking about the injustices that were done to us and how was it racist to not show condoms on the cover and this and that and the other. And I think that people at DC, Paul and other people, got very upset at that, reading about themselves in the editorial page of Milestone, how unfair they were because they'd been paying for this whole thing. I felt it was their money. I really did. I felt it was unnecessary. I felt we could have gotten what we wanted without going through the let's put it on the cover based on principle. Because what happened after that was not good.
Mysteriously, payments that were due to Milestone kind of dried up and we kind of had a little bit of trouble.
Paul's response was dispassionate and direct. This is the way you feel about how we treat you, then we're gonna no longer treat you like we were treating you before. We will treat you in this new way. And that's when things became very hard for Milestone. Soon after that cover incident is when I left and didn't discuss it with anybody. And it was just a very bad situation for me. Handled not very well by me. Derek, I don't know what Derek said. I think he was disappointed because I just made the move. There was no hard, long discussion with Derek because at that time, I wasn't having any conversations with Dwayne and Derek about anything. My friendship with Michael continued, but not with Dwayne and Derek. Not at all.
I would talk to Dwayne on the phone every once in a while. Hey, man, how's it going? And everything. You'd say, oh, man, it's always a fight.
At the time, the whole comics industry was not collapsing, but it was definitely changing and imploding and shrinking. I mean, Derek was doing the best he could to keep everything together.
Milestone was dealing with the challenges of the industry.
They ended up moving to DC Comics and working out of DC Comics offices. But once you're doing that, it's over.
The Milestone line, along with a number of other lines, were cut.
I don't know whether we broke the news to them or they broke the news to us. We just weren't able to make it work in the marketplace.
I think that they just ran into losing sales, and these guys are difficult to work with anyway. At the time when they were considering what to do with Milestone, that was part of it.
It pissed me off because sometimes they don't know what was missing until you jump up and scream loud enough. And that's what was the bummer about Milestone stopping, was there was a voice that was silenced.
It's sad because Milestone is the greatest thing that ever happened. Milestone's the greatest thing that ever happened to comics since the Black Panther.
I think when you see comics fans talk about Milestone now, they often talk about Milestone as some sort of failed experiment. It's always been my argument that Milestone Comics didn't fail, but that comics failed Milestone.
Milestone is not a failure by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of folks who not only got their career started, but got a crash course in storytelling and business from Milestone.
How many people did Milestone Media hire? How many artists got their start at Milestone Media? How many writers? How many illustrators? That's passed on through all of these artists, probably hundreds of artists.
Milestone was not a failure to me because the things that we created and the characters that we created are forever.
Good show.
About 3 years after Milestone stopped publishing, a producer pal of mine pitched the idea of doing Static to Kids WB.
Basically, I got a phone call and said, would you mind if we did Static as a TV show? And, you know, I thought about it and said yes.
Static Shock, the animated series, was an extraordinary success.
The first day that Static was on television, more people saw it than read all of 45 issues combined.
The creative process was mostly Dennis and Dwayne.
At that point, they patched things up a little bit. I remember talking to Dwayne, and he said, you know what? There are some things I can never forgive Dennis for, but I can sure as hell work with him.
We worked together on Static Shock once again. We got along famously professionally, but personally, it was a little trickier.
Because I was friends with everyone, even when people weren't getting along, I was talking to everybody.
After the success of Static Shock, Dwayne and Dennis, I hear, were talking about a reboot of the whole Milestone line.
I felt it was important because these characters need to be seen again by an entirely new generation, by the generation that missed them, and by their kids. That's when the idea for bringing it back started.
I was excited to say, okay, let's get together. Again, we're scheming on how to revive Milestone, the whole thing. And then it was over.
I get a call from his wife saying that Dwayne was in the hospital.
Dwayne had a heart attack. He had surgery. He had come out of surgery.
So we all thought he was going to be fine, and he was fine.
They sent me an email from the hospital, and it was a picture of Static Shock, the action figure that was going to be produced. Look what we created. Look what we did. And then the next day he was dead.
It was like somebody just hit me and took all the air out of me.
I turned on the computer and it said Dwayne McDuffie was dead.
You know, I always thought that Dwayne didn't realize how much of an impact his work had on people.
I mean, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, Dwayne McDuffie, I own a massive debt to.
What he has given to comics, what he has given to animation can't be overstated.
So many people coming to us and saying, this needs to come back. There's still a void.
And it was that pivotal moment where you just go, well, we just can't let it end.
We had a memorial service shortly after Dwayne's death.
I was fine until I saw Dwayne's mom. When I saw his mom, and we started talking about her son, that's when I broke down. And she knew what kind of rocky relationship we had, but none of that mattered. You know, none of that mattered. What mattered was what we had done and what we had shared and the devastating loss.
People were starting to disperse. I called Dennis and Reggie, and I remember saying, we can't let this die. This is too important.
That's when the idea for bringing it back started.
It was time. Reggie held his head. We should talk.
We can't just let it end like this. We can't let it end at a memorial service.
Dennis shook his head as he always shook his head. I'm in.
I called Derek 2 days after. We kind of patched things up and we talked about it, and I apologized for any of my miscalculations on how I should have behaved. And he accepted my apology, and I really meant it, because Dwayne's gone, and it won't be the same, but to me, it's just as imperative now to build this again. And he agreed.
Huge news at the con. Milestone Comics is coming back, and Reginald Hudland is part of all of this. And
after Dwayne McDuffie passed away, I met with Reggie Hudlin, who had been invited into the Milestone Media Group. So we took a number of meetings with him and Dennis, and really just talked about the future of Milestone and these characters. And we saw that there was an incredible missed opportunity not having these characters out there. Everyone at DC was excited about the idea of bringing it back to life.
This is going to be a new Milestone Media. It's not a matter of doing what we did before. It's about defining what Milestone Media means now.
Hardware is making another appearance. Blood Syndicate. We're relaunching Static Shock. We're relaunching Icon and Rocket. But the most exciting part is that we have a whole bunch of new characters that people are not ready for and they have not expected.
Who would imagine that there would be so many changes in fandom, where you have people really demanding diversity and inclusivity, and so the industry has changed quite a bit. And frankly, it was the right time for DC to do this right now.
There's definitely been an evolution and progress since I was a child. Not only have we come such a long way that Black Panther, the movie, is even being made, it's going to be a tentpole movie.
I'm so glad we're making the Black Panther movie now, and it's going to be just the way I had envisioned it, and I can't wait to see it.
Still not sure what I am.
That Luke Cage on Netflix that's some powerful. When I heard they were making the Luke Cage, I was a little apprehensive at first.
It's you. Yeah, it's you. Sweet Christmas.
I've watched little black kids dressed up as Thor and Captain America and Batman and Superman for years. Last year, I saw little white kids dressed up as the Black Panther. That,
We
to
talk
me,
about it.
is way more progress than anything I can quantify.
I don't see any way you can look at this Renaissance not paying homage to Milestone Media. They made it okay to be black and dream.
This is a world that needs Milestone Comics in it. It needs that example.
Milestone was a badge of honor. It represented a change in the industry. I must say it's the most exciting thing that I have ever done in my life. Other than growing up next to Dennis with a stack of comic books from my brother's collection.
It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. Being able to work with Derek again means more to me than anyone could possibly understand. It's as it should be, because we started this together. So we're going to continue this together.
Yeah, very good documentary. Like I said, just important. I wanted to show this just on the heels of what, and this was all we were going to do today, but I'm glad that we got to talk that tidbit about Aldis Hodge and what the showrunner had to say, Ben Watkins and things like that. But I'm glad we got to show this after that, just because it further highlights what we're all trying to say about the base level stuff and about there being several layers to this conversation, and how important it is, because there were people that, like, the point that others have made before, being that there are people that read this comic when it first hit the shelves that were children, that waited 50 plus years to see this character on screen, and then just to selfishly take the character away without thinking about what this character means generationally, what this character means to the community, what this character, all those things, the things we've said. There are people that have died, like McDuffie, that did not get to see Black Panther, but grew up on those comics and things like that. It's important. We owe it not just for the representation aspect, not just for the community, but to the people that that fought, and to see these characters, to see these fictional characters, to have an avenue for these characters. So that is one of the reasons I wanted to show this. It was very important because again, I never know who's watching. I never know who watches in replays or whatever. But if you're one of the people that are like, gosh, this whole recast thing, it's so annoying. It's so disrespectful. So this, again, at the base level, you're still wrong. At base level, it's still not disrespectful. But at the base level, you might be saying that. But again, I implore you to dig a little bit deeper. Dig a little bit deeper into this conversation, and you will see what people are exactly saying. So representation, of course, does matter. But I like I said, it was a shorter stream today because I didn't have not a lot of news today, but I did want to come hang out, and I did want to. I'm glad we did. I thought this was probably one of the better streams we've done, especially when it comes to, every year I'm always talking about how we're going to do something within the month of Black History Month, even though we can do it year round, but within the month of Black History Month to try to do something and highlight Black excellence, Black characters, Black this, Black that, even though we typically do that year round over here on this channel. But just to put the emphasis on it, I love my people. I wouldn't change my color for anything. I love my culture. I'm Black and I'm proud, and I want to be represented in the things that I love. So if they were feeling that in the 70s and things like that, the fact that we are still having to advocate for that is crazy to me, but it's not crazy, but it's crazy to me. But hopefully, prayerfully, if you are watching and you are new here or you are whatever, something triggered in you, you had an aha moment where you were like, I get it, I see it, I get it. Even if you don't necessarily still agree wholeheartedly on a recast or whatever, to be able to have empathy, to be able to see the plight of someone else is, instead of just coming at it so disrespectfully, oh, it's so disrespectful and this and that, be able to see the plight of what someone's saying, be able to have empathy, be able to see what this community is saying and why it's important. So anyway, I do appreciate every single one of you being here. I will jump in here for a second. I see Stamina said, Darius, this was such a good idea. Rubo, I love this so much. Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate you being here, Stamina. Gray said, great documentary. Thank you for bringing this to us, for sure. Cleve17 said, I remember when all this stuff, I remember when all of that stuff happened. Yeah, again, like I said, we've got viewers and things, people that are fans of these projects that have been around for to see the inception of Milestone and after, and wanting to see some of those characters like T'Challa, even though he's not a part of DC, on the screen and things like that. So yeah, we got Antonio Films that said, my cousin has a Black comic line called Black Tooth Publishing. Wishing him much success. Yeah, definitely wishing much success on that for sure. Gen X Comics said another doc you should watch is White Scripts, Black Superman, Black Masculinity in Comics. So yeah, definitely, that's definitely one we can throw on so we can have more Black excellence and watch more things for the for this month as well. Cleve17 also said someone definitely needs to do something on Black Panther and put it on Tubi or Netflix. Yeah. Yeah. I see. Let's see anybody else in here. See some RIPs to McDuffie for sure. Raptor Cloak said, we can't let this end on a memorial service. Take notes, Kugler. You know what? That is so funny that you say that, because I had watched this earlier today to vet through it, to make to make sure that it was on par with what the message I want to convey today. And I said the exact same thing when he said that. When he said that, I was like, damn, if only Ryan and Kugler, if only Nate and Kugler could have taken that same sentiment and been like, we can't let this end on, yeah, bro, I said the same thing. That's so funny. That's funny. Dan the Man said, there'll never be another Dwayne McDuffie. Instead, Derek and them at Milestone are training the next generation to carry on in his place. RIP for sure. Professor Films fan said R.I.P. Dwayne McDuffie. I remember Justice League Doom dedicated the film to him. Antonio Films also said it's great. It's a great thing they did, but that's the problem with having black ideas under white ownership. Reminds me of the Target situation with black-owned products. Yeah, that's very true too. You know, it's got to be for us, by us. It's got to be that mentality to where we are the CEO, we are the president, we are in the writers' rooms, we are the secretaries, we are the teachers, we are every bit of involved. Not to say that there's nobody else involved, but we are. It is ran, functions, breathes, has life because of us. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. JW said, I love this channel. Feels like I'm amongst my brothers when I watch. Well, definitely appreciate it. Again, this is a growing community that we want to continue to grow. And I say it all the time at the end of each stream. I do love you guys. I really do. You know, even though none of us have formally met in person or anything like that, I spend a lot of time with this community, and I'm wanting to spend a lot more time with this community as it continues to grow and continue to have different ideas for the channel and helping it grow. Yeah, no, it definitely is a family. Definitely is a growing family. Let's see. Raymond said, Captain America Brave New World, first reactions are coming out. Yes, that's right. And people are saying it's great, but the post-credit scene is horrible. Oh, no. We're definitely going over that tomorrow. They are going to be able to give their review. The review embargo, I believe, drops tomorrow, so they'll be able to give reviews tomorrow. Am I right on that? I believe that's tomorrow, right? I believe that is tomorrow. If that is tomorrow, we are going over that. Yeah, because the world premiere is tomorrow, right? So can't they give their review after? Yeah. So, yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's see. Be Positive 99 said the OG Black Panther was Donald Sumter from Game of Thrones, the Black Panther 1977 crime/thriller. Let's see. Who else? Black politician, not talking to me, sorry. Let me go back up a little bit. Frederick G said, I'm not butchering last name, sorry, but someone should be Black Panther. And the name of this special, for those wondering, someone asked, JW asked, it's Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics. So this is season 1, episode 5. So there are other episodes of this. This is just the one that I've seen of it. Let's see. Yep, that's about it. Well, Gray said earlier, Ben Watkins, Cord Jefferson, and Reginald Hudlin for Aldis Hodge Black Panther film. No, that would be dope. That would be dope. Robert Cloak said, I'm glad you can think of a producer that could respect BP aside from Reginald Hudlin. I can't even think a director to replace Coogler. Yeah, we gotta get some fresh new blood in there that's not tainted by the notion that this character has to die with Chadwick. It's never what he wanted or anything like that. You know, we've talked about all that stuff. So yeah, gotta get some new people in there. Let's see. Rockb922 said Van Lathan was talking about T'Child. Listen to his The Ring episode when they addressed the recast news last month. I'll have to check that out. Let's see. Raymond said Aldis Hodge is for me the main person for this role. He just gives and oozes T'Challa. Yeah, I agree. Jamie, appreciate you being here. Let's see. Official MG said, "Oh, I'm not sure what that means, but I hated First Avengers until I watched it last week for the 3rd time, and now I like the movie, so I'm hoping for a solid movie." Oh, he's talking to Brian Fisher, not me. Sorry. Let's see. He also said Cap 4 reactions release in an hour. Oh, that is today. Okay, in an hour. So was the world premiere deal today? Was that today? Brian Fisher said, Alex Cross was awesome, and him as Hawkman is what sold me, even back when Black Adam came out. Yeah, I think a lot of us said that same thing. He just really gave that an ooze T'Challa. JW said, perhaps we get the Miles Morales comic treatment where Miles gets sent to the main 616. Maybe so. Let's see. Stamina said, defund Toussaint. If Stamina's still with us, that's funny. Raymond said, I was wondering if we were going live tonight. Yeah. Sorry. Like I said, I was late. But that seems to be what we've got there. Gen X down there said, FUBU for sure. Bird said, E-Man just tweeted his review of Cat 4 and said it was average, better than bad. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And I felt like a lot of people were going to say that's average. You know, it's okay. We'll see as more and more comes out. The premiere was tonight. Okay. Professor Film Fan said, one of my favorite reviewers said he was disappointed in Brave New World. Oh, no. Oh, no. JW said, do more of these, but add more commentary. I would have. Yeah, I felt like a lot, though, that I had to say, you know, they were really saying. The things that I really did comment on, the only things I really had to, and I sometimes I feel like we say and repeat the same things about Recast T'Challa, so I was just like, let these brothers cook on this. But I definitely do some more of these. Antonio Film said, thanks for showing that. I've been meaning to look up what happened to Milestone Comics. Yeah, it's definitely, that was really good. It was really good. I saw a clip of it on Instagram today of Hudlin, and of the part where they were talking about how he came in and beat the Fantastic Four, and I blew all their minds. And I was like, okay, what is the documentary? This is clearly a documentary. Watched it earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, we got to watch this tonight. Got to watch it. But yeah, so that seems to be all the comments for tonight. Like I said, it wasn't going to be that long of a stream tonight. We just wanted to go over what Ben Watkins had to say in regards to Aldis Hodge still secretly talking about it. No, not wanting to jinx anything by coming out and saying, oh, yeah, give it to me. And then, of course, watching the documentary here of Milestone Comics and just Black Excellence and things like that. So tomorrow we'll go over the reviews for Brave New World. Again, I see Brave New World the day after tomorrow, and I will give my review of it as well Thursday afternoon, because I'll see it Thursday around like 1-2. So after I get out, I'll give it, and I'll have the Pantheon stream that later that night. Friday, no live stream Friday, won't be here on Friday, but again, tomorrow night and Thursday night, we are back live. Hopefully we'll have some good topics for it tomorrow night as well. If not, don't fret. We'll do another Black Excellence segment and highlight something and someone else. So there's lots out there that we can do that for. So again, Brother Stark, appreciate you being here. You said that was dope and innovative. I'm glad you guys liked it. I really am. I'm glad. Chi-Town said, so taking a guess about BP3, I think that Suri will die. I think I can predict Ryan's pattern. We'll see. We'll see what goes on in it. B-Chap said, damn, I missed the live again. Brother, go back. You can replay this. It was a good one. It's a good one, so you can definitely replay this and check it out on the replay. I'm sorry, I was late again. It's supposed to be 8:30 Central Standard Time, but it's late again. But again, I'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate you guys. If you're new here, you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit that subscription button. Thank you all for being here. As I say, much love to all of you guys. This growing community means so much to me. The ones that have been here from day one, the ones that just joined, the ones that have been here in between, everything, every single one of you means so much to me. This growing community, help us grow. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Peace out.